are really essential to being human. Um, we're not designed for isolation. I think this is part of the, or maybe the whole reason is in the beginning, we were created in the likeness of a triune God. I don't know if you pondered that before, of how God eternally existing in like inner relationship. And then in the beginning of Genesis, we see God come down and say, let us make man in our, plural, image and after our our likeness. People are designed for relationship. And when humans have broken relationship, are isolated, we experience a variety of not only mental problems, but of physical problems. We just come apart. And a global case study in this um, was 2020, right? And all the isolating that went on, the social distancing, and people fell apart in really some unexpected ways. It was just a very difficult time. There's been a lot of studies on solitary confinement in prison and whether that's helpful or a good idea, etc. Craig Haney, in an annual review of criminology, introduces kind of the abstract of his research, says a robust scientific literature has established the negative psychological effects of solitary confinement. Right? We could have guessed this conclusion, but he articulated it for us. Nelson Mandela, commenting on prison life, says that solitary confinement is the most forbidding aspect of prison life. Going back a little further, I'm jealous of the beard. Charles Dickens, he wrote a book that was, I think, probably popular in Britain, not so much here, about his visit to the American continent. But he visited a solitary confinement prison, and he says, I hold this slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the body, was his conclusion on that. So the loss of relationship, sometimes that's through death, through distance, through betrayal. Somebody's a dear friend, but then you've been betrayed. Through conflict, when there's animosity and friction. When relationships are broken or you're in isolation, you fall apart. We're not meant for that. It is one of the most difficult things in the human experience. Well, when Jesus' followers were in the upper room the night before the betrayal, this is what they were experiencing. They had just been having this conversation. Well, mostly Jesus was explaining to them that he was soon departing. He wouldn't be with them. He would die. He's been right with them all this time, and now he's not going to be with them. And they were trying to process this, and that's a lot of what we talked about last week. Their close friend who's been with them through thick and thin through all these last few years, Judas, just left the room on his way to betray him. So this betrayal in a relationship. The rest of the world, while they're huddled in this room having this last meal together, the rest of the town, so to speak, was really out to get them. It did not approve of the Jesus movement, wanted to squelch it. And so all these relationships are strained, are difficult, facing the loss of this closeness of relationships. Well, into this moment, Jesus spoke to his close followers, and he speaks to you and to me and to our hearts, explaining the framework for understanding and viewing all of our relationships. And that framework is love. We'll talk about that in more depth. But I think a good way to sort of summarize this whole conversation in chapter 15 through the first few verses of chapter 16 is for followers of Jesus, love is the key to all of our relationships. If you have your Bibles, I invite you to turn there to John chapter 15. If you didn't bring a Bible, there are some Bibles scattered around the chair backs, and this is on page 901 in those Bibles. And in this passage, beginning in chapter 15, verse 1, Jesus addresses these three key relationships: our relationship with God through Jesus, our relationship with other believers, as you look around, the people in this room and beyond, and our relationship with the world. Love is the key to all these, but in kind of different ways, as he explains. This passage that we're looking at today is the heart, I believe, of John's gospel. It's the heart of the whole conversation in the upper room that spans chapter 13 through 17. And it's, I think this is the key to finding life, is in this passage. Gerald Borchet, I'm not sure. I'm sorry if I'm messing up your name, Gerald. Or is it Gerald? I'm not sure. But he's done a ton of research on John's gospel. And you probably can't really see that. I'll just tell you about it briefly. He sees this upper room discourse, this farewell address, in kind of these concentric rings where Jesus talks about something and he comes back to it, and in these concentric circles. In the heart of all of this, the bullseye, he says, is John 15, the first half of that chapter that we will look at today. The heart of Jesus' concern, what was deep on his mind the night before his death, is that we would understand that followers of Jesus, for followers of Jesus, love is the key to all of our relationships. So, how does love define our relationship with God, with each other, and with the world? That's what we're going to look at, address each of those. First, we'll look at our relationship with God, specifically our relationship with God through Jesus. So starting in chapter 15, verse 1. Oh, man. If you're really quick, you would have just got the slide that has all the fill-ins in it at one time. So, disaster averted. First of all, in relation to Jesus, begins like this: I am the true vine. Another significant I am statement from Jesus here. And my Father is the vine dresser, and every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes it away. And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes it, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word I have spoken to you. And then here comes the bullseye of the bullseye. He says, abide in me and I in you. The key concept when it comes to our relationship with Jesus is to abide. To abide. This is a super cool word. It's kind of old-fashioned, the actual word abide. The Greek word meno has a sense of to remain or to stay, to reside or to dwell. In the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, how this is basically, I think pretty much every case that this word is used, it means somebody is sort of living in a place, or at least staying there, maybe a couple nights or a few months. Like Mary went and abided with her cousin Elizabeth for a few months, or permanently describing where somebody dwells regularly. So how do we dwell with Jesus? How do we do that? Like, where is he? How do I live with Jesus? What does it mean to abide? Here's a couple commentators, how they have tried to sort of percolate this down so we can grab onto it. abide. Uh, to remain united to me by a living faith, to live a life of dependence on me, and obey my doctrines, imitate my example, and constantly exercise faith in me. That's Albert Barnes in his notes on the New Testament, kind of an old commentary. That key word there is dependence, dependence on Jesus. Robert Mounts in the Revised Expository Bible Commentary, he says this word abide means to remain in unbroken fellowship. So we have this idea of dependence, we have this idea of fellowship, relationship, this mutual interactions together. And then as we look at verses 9 and verses 10 in chapter 15, we see that Jesus connects the idea of abiding in Jesus with abiding in his love. And so love is the key component of this. So dependence, relationship, love, and I've tried to put those all together into this phrase. Abide is to remain in a close, dependent relationship of love. And this is I'm just going to say, this is the key to life as we figure this out. Abiding in Jesus is the heart of Jesus' farewell address and the key to life in Jesus. William Temple, who, he has what I think is the coolest title ever, or had, is the Archbishop of Canterbury. Wouldn't you like that title? He said that whatever leads to this, abiding in Jesus, is good. Whatever hinders this is bad. Whatever does not bear on this is futile or of no consequence. I'm just trying to reiterate how central this idea is. I believe the ladies of our church have adopted this as their key word for the year, and they've been diving into this deep. So the men, I'm trying to catch you up in one session here. So key idea. This could be a whole series of sermons just on abiding. I'm trying to put it in one point of one sermon. Much more to explore, but very briefly, a couple things from John 15. In this passage we're looking at today, we learned some things about why we should be abiding, why it's so important, and how we abide. So let's jump into that. From John 15, why is this idea of abiding so important? Why is remaining in this close dependent relationship of love with Jesus such a key idea? Well, we learn that all spiritual fruit flows out of this. All spiritual fruit flows out of abiding, not the other way around. Let me read from John 15, starting in verse 4, and then we'll come back to this thought. Jesus says, "Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself, unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." The illustration is very vivid and obvious. You prune some stuff off a plant, and it dies, right? Dries up rather quickly. And this whole idea of we need to be connected in this close relationship with Jesus in order to flourish in the Christian life, or just to flourish in life at all. And the problem is we often get this backwards. We start with trying to conjure up fruit in our life and hoping that will lead to this closeness with Jesus, and then we'll feel okay. It's rather backwards. We try to be, more righteous. I try to be, good. Try not to do bad things. I try to have the attitudes of Christ. I try to be more joyful, more loving. I try to, conjure up peacefulness in my heart. and yet I still find myself being anxious. I just keep working on these things. I try to do more ministry. I sign up for more, committees. I give more. I try to, be more missional. I try to do more evangelism. I try, and it's completely backwards. This flows out of abiding. This flows out of remaining in a close, dependent relationship with God. And so as we look at these different relationships, they have a fundamental difference. And as we look at our relationship with Jesus, it's basically a relationship of dependence. We are not trying to do a bunch of things for God to, appease Him or get to this status level where I feel, okay about myself, or I'm more sure that I'll probably get to heaven. It does not work that way. We maintain a close relationship of abiding in Jesus, and these things just come out of us from our hearts. Think of a baby in utero deciding, I don't really need this umbilical cord. I think I'm just going to grow. It's going to be good. This is what it's like to try to live the Christian life without abiding in, being connected to the life source of Jesus, without remaining in close, dependent relationship of love. Without this, all our efforts are really futile. They are pointless. So if you kind of follow the logic of this a bit, the next natural question is, okay, how do I do that? How do I live with, dwell with, remain in a close relationship with Jesus when I can't see Him? Well, we could say, and I would love to say a ton about this, talk about this in other messages and other passages and delve into this, but I'm trying to just stick to this passage, and I'll mention a couple things that help us abide just here from John 15. How do we abide? Well, first of all, we abide in God's love. Verse 9, Jesus says, as the Father has loved me, that's how I've loved you. So abide in my love. This connection between residing in, dwelling in God's love, having God's love dwell in us, that is somehow connected to our ability to remain in a close, dependent relationship with Jesus, to abide in Him. This week I was listening to, well, it's a favorite of Tom's again, Sarah Groves. There's this beautiful song, You Cannot Lose My Love, and the first few lines say, you will lose your baby teeth. At times you'll lose your faith in me. You will lose a lot of things, but you cannot lose my love. Goes on to say other things we might lose, but we cannot lose the sure love of God. I've tried to, a fairly recent practice just in my relating to God, been challenged to just take some time, most days to just meditate on and receive God's love. And I call it basking, like you'd bask in the sunbeam or something, of just taking a few minutes just to reflect on that. And that's how I begin my time with the Lord. This is one way we can abide in His love. Well, it also tells us in this passage that we can abide in Jesus by abiding in His Word, which I think means basically to be saturated with and responsive to His words. Verse 7 says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, this connection. Verse 10, if you keep my commandments, do the things that my word says, then you will abide in my love. So how do we abide in his word? How do we live with his word, settled in us? Well, we take regular time to reflect on what he's told us in the Bible with the intention, with the purpose of doing something about that, with responding to it, having our hearts shaped by it and our lives shaped by it, not just to pile up information, but to have the Word of God settle into our souls. We think about it with the intention of doing something about it. So, I'm going to limit myself to saying that much about abiding. I think it's super important. We got two more points here to make. But I will say this, that Jesus concludes this whole conversation about abiding with this comment. Here's why I told you this, verse 11. These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be full. Jesus is telling his followers that this is the way to the happy life, the good life, the beautiful life, the joyful life, is when we are relationally connected to Jesus. This is not always the default way we think about relating to God. It's like we can approach even a quiet time as a chore. So recently, I discovered a feature of the iPhone. Maybe you've already discovered this. You can make shortcuts. It's like a macro, a series of things it'll do all at once with a touch of one button. And so I created a shortcut called Happy Place. And it does a variety of things with one button push. It silences all my notifications. It turns on some background noise so I can't hear other things happening in my house or outside my house. It opens up my prayer journal. It opens up a devotional app. And I think it does a couple other things too. But I've called it Happy Place for my own sake, because I need to remember this is the most precious thing, most beautiful thing I could be doing right now. This is not a chore. This is not, well, I better do this since I'm a pastor, or, people are going to start wondering, or anything like that. I do this because this is the very best thing I could be doing at this moment. So, our most vital relationship is our relationship with God through Jesus. And the key word for that, so to speak, concept is to abide, which means to remain in a close, dependent relationship of love. And this relationship is basically a dependent one. Well, Jesus moves from here to the topic of the second relationship, and that is our relationship with each other, with fellow believers. And again, love is the key, but in a slightly different way. So let's take a look at that. This begins in verse 12, and really verse 12 is a good summary of this whole discussion. So in relation to other believers, verse 12 says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another." Well, it's easy to say. This core command, this core imperative for relating to each other is to love each other. But love is kind of a fuzzy word, and so Jesus goes on to explain in what way or to what degree are we to love each other. Verse 12, love as I have loved you. Verse 13, greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. This really ramps it up, doesn't it? It's a very sacrificial love. we could say, in relation to other Jesus followers, love sacrificially as close family friends. Like, look around the room. This is your family. These are, your partners in life. Um, these are ones that you should love in a particular way. Uh, in the Gospels are obviously the account of Jesus. He's obviously the point and main character. There is sort of a subplot. It's the story of the disciples. And he picks what seems like a super random selection of guys, and they move from natural social enemies to we would die for each other and with each other. It's really powerful if you kind of trace them through the Gospels and especially into Acts. Some of you have been watching The Chosen. I think that this series really draws this out in an interesting way of people like Matthew and Simon the Zealot. Matthew, a tax collector, he is a collaborator with the Roman oppressors, right? Unpopular with the Jewish folk. And Simon is a zealot, which is basically a militia-minded, pro-Jewish patriot. And so in The Chosen, when Jesus sends out 2 by 2, he pairs them up. Traveling buddies, have fun. Who has God partnered you with? Who has he thrown into your life? Another believer, maybe in this room, maybe in your Facebook friends, maybe in the home you live in, and you just grate on each other because you don't see eye to eye on some things, and yet God has partnered you in the same boat together. Are there fellow Christians that you don't really see eye to eye with? Currently in our culture at this moment, it sure seems like by far the most divisive realm is politically, and there's a lot of reasons that that's the case, but I'm just going to say I think it is a treasured thing that within our church, in fact, even in my small group, there's people with different political leanings that are loving each other. They are praying for each other. They are caring for each other. They're bearing each other's burdens. They're weeping with each other, rejoicing with each other. I don't see that happening out there. Do you? They're lined up face to face in a battle. I see examples of it here of what Jesus is talking about. Who has he partnered you with that you need to love? And he says all these things, this whole paragraph, I can't really talk all about it right now, but he comes down to the reason for this conversation. The reason for the abide conversation is that your joy would be full. And the reason for this next conversation is verse 17, so that you will love one another. And we see here that this relationship with each other is an interdependent one. Not independent, not dependent, but it's interdependent. It's mutual. It's, we use the word for our core habits, share, a mutuality, koinonia, a sharing in life together should describe the way we see each other. It's a familial, a family love. And he says this so that we will love one another. Fellow Christians with different, different theological leanings. You might think, oh, that person is too Calvinistic or not enough, or they're too charismatic or not enough, or whatever. Partnered you together. Different political leanings, different personality. Sometimes you just might think, that person is just too bold, they're too much for me. And others, that person is too reserved. Like, what's their problem? And it's friction there. Or maybe it's, the cat people and the dog people. I don't know. There's a lot of ways we could have friction, or if I knew anything about sports teams, I'd say something about it at this point. So God's partnered you with these people. These are your forever family. Um, like the disciples, this random group of dudes who moved from I'm not going to eat with or sit or talk to that guy to I would die for that guy. I would die with that guy. Um, that's what Jesus is asking of us. So love sacrificially as close friends. Let's look at this one other realm that Jesus rolls into, this third kind of arena, and that is our relationship to everybody else. All those people who maybe don't share your faith. They don't believe the same way. They don't love the same Jesus. And the key word in this whole realm is kind of a funny one. Might surprise you, but this is kind of the third imperative in here is to remember. When it comes to all those other people who don't necessarily agree with you, we need to remember. This is how he begins the conversation. He says, "Know this." Keep this in your head. Verse 20, he says, "Remember this." At the end of this, in chapter 16, verse 4, remember this, know this, remember this, remember this. So what is this? Verse 18, if the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you're not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. So, verse 20, remember the word I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. So what are we to remember? It's that all those people out there, that's not where we're going to find love. And we build so much of our efforts internally with trying to, we alternatively are, afraid of what's out there, or we love what's out there, and we try to blend in and appease everybody, or we do all kinds of things that are just kind of unproductive spiritually when we're trying to count on love from people who don't understand Jesus. Don't be alarmed that they don't love you. Instead, remember who does love you. Remember who does love you. We go back to the beginning of abiding in Jesus' love. So, when you find yourself frustrated by the lack of understanding, out there, so to speak, a lack of appreciation, a lack of acceptance of your love for Jesus, remember that's not where you get those things, understanding, appreciation, acceptance. Those come from Jesus. This, we become to understand here that this relationship is basically independent. It's independent. We don't need to worry about a reciprocal relationship with those who don't share our faith. We don't need to worry about gaining their approval or living according to their affection. You are free to love them regardless. It's not tied to how much you're loved. You may get some love back. That's a fun bonus. But Jesus says, don't live for that. Don't count on that. Don't even expect that. You love anyway. You love regardless. So instead of trying to get something from the world, we give something. We take a posture of, I'm just going to be a restorative blessing because this place is broken. People are hurting. People are confused. People have needs. And I have this infinite flow of Jesus' life going through my veins, and I could just love these people. It doesn't have to be interdependent or dependent, it is independent. So, for followers of Jesus, love is the key to all of these realms, but you could see it is so in a different way for each. It's a different dynamic. Um, if your relationship with God feels kind of strained, um, you maybe it's not enjoyable for you to approach God. Maybe He feels distant from you. Maybe you wished He worked a certain way in your life and that didn't happen, and so that's really frustrating. Well, Jesus gives us the answer to that, and that is to abide, to do these things that place us securely in His love and saturate us with His Word, and those things begin to nourish us with His life. If it's your relationship with fellow believers that's strained, it's difficult, I don't understand why this person's that way, and that person bothers me because of their personality or views or whatever. What Jesus says is basically just love them. Love them till it hurts. They're family. You'll be with them forever. Might as well get used to loving them right now. Well, He doesn't say it like that with that tone, but we can kind of extract that. If your relationship with the world out there is what hurts you, is a stressor in your life, is a frustration, well, remember who does love you. You can't expect to necessarily have the world love and understand you and appreciate you as you try to follow Jesus, but His love is secure. So this felt like this passage, I was sort of committed to tackling it at one time, but man, it's rich. I hope you go back and read it in its entirety and reflect on it some more. I hope it's helpful as you kind of view these different realms of relationships. Our closing challenge, so you can, fill in that last blank and feel at peace, is to rethink your relationships with love. In different ways, but it all comes back to love and where we find it and where we are sure to find it. Rethink your relationships with love. Would you pray with me?